Okay. Hi. I think this is going to work. So I don't have any screencast software, so you have to sort of sit and just watch this video in my office with my dear head on the wall. And I'm going to be just holding up sheets of paper. I know it's very low rent. Hopefully I'll make it a little bit more flashy in the coming weeks once I buy the right software. So today I don't want to make this quick, so I don't take up all your time, but we are going to be talking about image and sensory detail. I start with it because I think it's the absolute most important thing when it comes to writing, and it ties back into the writing process, that two-step process I was talking about in class last week. So to review that, remember, I didn't write this part down, but hopefully you did in class, or you know it. You've got the process of communicating in the world, basically, which is, oh, I do have it. Yes, I have it here. Okay. On paper. All right, so step one, you have something in your head, right? So whether if you're a creative writer, you've got like a character, right? Or a story, or if you're writing nonfiction, you have this event that happened to you in your life. Anything you write, it has to begin here. It begins as thoughts. That's all writing is. It's just thinking, making stuff up, remembering the world, seeing the world and recording it, all that stuff. So you have something in your head. Step two, you convert that something into language. So it's because ideally this is what we write, right? This is why writing even exists. Is that if we had discs that we could upload our thoughts and ideas to and just pass them on and say, here, download this, we wouldn't have to worry about ever talking or writing or anything. But that we can't do that yet. We need to wait, I guess, until the technology. So language is our technology. These sort of squiggles, right? This weird like Y-shaped thing is a Y. So we put it all together, and these start to evoke ideas, right, that we can get concepts about. So then you convert that something into language, and then if I'm a reader, if we're talking, it's listening, I hear you, but I read your language in the form you present it in, right? So I read your poem or your short story, and I see your sentences, and I take your big grand idea that you've broken up into this form, and I just read that language. I receive that, if you want to think of it as a code or whatever, that's what I receive. And then finally, this language puts stuff in my head, right? So by putting those words together, I start thinking about ideas, or I start seeing stuff if you're really, doing your job. So what this means for you is that, there's all these ways that writing can break down, that what you want to say doesn't get across. You have 4 places where it could break down. You as writers need to worry about just these 2, right? These are for readers to worry about. Once it's in the reader's hands, there's nothing you can do. You can only do the best you can to have something in your head and then convert that into language. So that's what we're going to work on all semester long. Okay, these 2 things. Let's see. So I guess the question then is, how does this fit in with image and detail, right? This idea of the writing process. And it comes in with the idea of subjectivity versus objectivity. And your goal is to always present to the reader a kind of, well, I don't want to say an objective view of the world, because it doesn't get into stuff like bias and opinion. That's not really what I'm talking about. Hopefully I'll illustrate it with other ideas. But basically you want to present the world to the reader, and then they can kind of experience it for themselves through your writing. You don't want to do the experiencing for them. Let me try to figure out a better way to say this. I have notes here. This is what I'm doing when I leave the camera frame. Okay, here's an example. What I mean by objectivity and subjectivity. Here's a sentence. A really bad sentence of bad writing that is terrible. Don't write the sentence. He was a nice man, tall and interesting. Right, so the problem with this is that you have all these words, these adjectives that don't mean anything set, right? My nice is not your nice. My interesting is not your interesting. Even my tall is not your tall necessarily. So you can't, if you write this sentence, you can have no hope or faith that, that this can happen, that like the man you have in your head will get into the other person's head. They might think of somebody who's much shorter than you were thinking, and the idea of nice being actually kind of cruel and stupid. I don't know. But these aren't words that help paint a picture. So avoid this sentence. Let's see. Do I have another one that's also kind of bad? Is not just like, those sort of subjective adjectives like nice and tall and interesting being different for different people. It's also just like not doing your job to evoke the experience in the reader, right? So here's another sentence. It got dark and I found it hard to see. dark, again, the sort of the adjectives that we have here could be a little bit more. I mean, we can all sort of, we know what darkness is, right? It's almost a universal experience. And finding it hard to see in the dark, we've all gone through it, right? So you can hope this gets a little bit closer at evoking the experience in the head of the reader, but it calls on the reader to do a lot more of the work, right? To sort of remember times in which they were in this experience. Ideally, your good writing when it is the best, can just evoke the experience on the page in the language. That's always the best thing that you can do. So we'll see some examples about how to do this. Okay. So that's the question: is you need to have more objective representations of the world.